Hey, Dustin here with the second episode of the Just the Tips Minecraft Redstone tutorial. This is going to be a simple tutorial going over inverters in Minecraft. A single simple topic, but a very expansive one. First off, we have a simple inverter which shuts off a redstone torch to result in a off charge coming out from the redstone system. So this redstone torch is on, turning on a lever will shut the torch off. A more direct approach without having this redstone line leading from the lever is simply shutting off the torch with the lever placed directly on the block that the torch is on. Over here I have a representation of what can be done with this. A redstone torch inside of a redstone system is keeping some pistons pushed out by sending out an on charge. However, shutting off, or turning on rather, a lever will shut the redstone torch off, retracting the piston. Same can be done with buttons. Over here I show how redstone inverters can be used to send a very compact charge straight up vertically. Right here is a system that uses a spiral kind of staircase to send a redstone charge up. It's really inefficient because it uses up 4 blocks in a 2x2 area. Turning on this torch will send the charge up there. However, using inverters, this can be done much more efficiently space-wise by placing first a torch on a block, directly above that another block, and then a torch on top of that block, and so on, resulting in a vertical stack of multiple inverters, which results in this redstone torch being shut off. However, when this redstone torch is shut off by putting a charge into that block, the piston is pushed out on the top because that redstone torch turns on. Here, another more direct approach is shown how the lever is placed directly on the first block. Over here is another use of inverters to send a vertical redstone charge. Over here, a single block area is used. It's slightly less efficient to send a charge down. This is if you're trying to send a charge up to some redstone system on top. But over here can be seen a redstone charge being sent straight down. What happens is this lever being turned on will charge this redstone dust. That powers this block, shutting off that redstone torch. That unpowers this, letting that redstone torch turn on, turning on this redstone dust. And there will be some resulting system down here that you want to control from up top. Over here I show how redstone torches are shut off not by repeaters but only by redstone dust on top of a block. This redstone torch is shut off, and these redstone torches are also shut off, but a redstone torch under a repeater will not be shut off. Over here is a very useful way to use the redstone inverters. This redstone torch is shut off, so these pistons are retracted. However, when this lever is shut off to the off position, these pistons push out because this torch is now on. It's a very simple piston door system. It can be doubled over onto the other side to make a wider door. Over here is another use of inverters. To keep water back, you would want a piston in the out position, so it's keeping water back, and that's done by putting a torch next to it. But then to shut that torch off, you put a charge into the block and water then comes out because the piston's pushed out of the way. Over here is a logic gate that uses inverters. These are very useful in really complex redstone systems such as mini games or calculators. Turning this lever off to the off position will uncharge all of this redstone line, allowing this torch to be on. Also this is a AND logic gate, so both this input and this input has to be off for the logic gate to put out a charge, which will be put out right there. Also, turning this lever to the off position will let that redstone torch power on, and this charges all of this redstone line, shutting off this torch. Also shown, you can have an infinite number of inputs, basically having all of these redstone torches. But now showing all of these to the on position. Once all of these inputs are fulfilled, including this lever, the two levers back there, and finally this lever. Once all of these are to the on position, all the redstone torches are shut off, and this redstone torch is allowed to be turned on, which then pushes out this piston. Nearing the end of the redstone tutorial, this is another redstone system. This is basically a control panel if you have something happening down there, be it a lava generator with multiple settings, just generally something you want to happen out there. I use pistons to represent actions. This could be one thing you want to happen, perhaps speeds for a lava or a cobblestone generator that uses lava and water. Hitting this button will do that. Hitting this button will do that. This seems simple, but to put buttons directly next to each other is actually really hard with redstone, because you can't simply run lines out the back, or they will all run into each other like that, and pressing one button will do a bunch of things. So how I do this is with a very complex system of inverters. First, you have to use multiple systems, or the systems will run into each other, because you're just putting them directly against each other. So firstly, this system works by, I'll get a lever out. This system works by pushing that piston out. This redstone torch is powering that block now. If this block wasn't there, it wouldn't be powering the redstone system. However, once that block is powered, it powers that bit of redstone right there, because the repeater will power the block it's touching. Go out to here, and using an inverter system, this torch would normally be on, but with this power going to it, it is shut off. Moving over to here, I'll have to break that. Once that input is fulfilled, when this is turned on, this redstone torch is no longer on. So this redstone line going back here is no longer powered, allowing this torch to be powered. Allowing this torch to be unpowered using the vertical inverter stack shown over there. This torch is then allowed to be on, this torch is shut off, and these repeaters are no longer powered, allowing this torch to be on, powering that block, which powers this piston. Now, some things are messed up in the back over here, resulting in all of this being broken. I have to have some blocks right there to cut off these redstone lines or they'll connect. That is the other redstone system. So now moving on to this other type of system. It uses something slightly different from this, because it just wouldn't work if they were exactly the same, because they'd be parallel to each other and mess up the other system. So how this one works is this redstone torch sends power through these repeaters, and normally that block would be sitting there, allowing power to go through there. However, once that piston pushes down using this redstone charge, this charged block, once it pushes down, there's no longer power going into this line, which allows this redstone torch to be on, which shuts off this redstone torch, which allows this redstone torch to be on, which shuts off this top redstone torch, no longer powering these repeaters, allowing this redstone torch to be on, which powers this piston. Now, a redstone system would be over here doing something, but I simply have a bunch of repeaters lined up here to show that the functions are completely separate from each other. Each one can be turned on completely separate of the other systems. So you can turn on each of these individually, and only one thing will happen, not all of these things. It just shows the separation in the whole system. That is it for this redstone tutorial. I hope people learned a lot about redstone inverters and how useful they can be in a lot of different redstone systems. I showed a few uses of them, such as piston doors, keeping water back in like an automated farm, for example, and in logic gates, and in compact control panels.